Forge World's Sabre tank is tiny, but mighty.
Spiky bits.
Welcome back, Hobby Maniacs. I'm Baer from SpikyBits.com, and we are checking out some Forge World today. I picked up the Legion Sabre Strike Tank, the tiniest but mightiest offering with treads I guess we've ever seen from Forge World. I mean, there's smaller tanks. I guess maybe the Death Corps have like a transport or like an artillery hauler, but it's not really armored, if you know what I mean. So this thing's kind of cool. It reminds me of that scene in Men in Black where they're like, I want a gun, and he's like, here you go, champ, the noisy cricket. This thing is adorable. Here you can see on Forge World's website, the newly redesigned site, I might add. It's pretty cool. Well, they sold out, and that's really interesting to see because they've been upping their stock numbers over the past couple of months, and we haven't seen a whole lot of sellouts, but this has proven to be extremely popular now. It doesn't have rules for 40K, and I'm not really going to go over the rules for this thing in Horus Heresy because, to be quite honest, 7th edition is 3 years in the past in my personal opinion. However, you know, it's still being used by everybody in the Horus Heresy, which is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just not going to speak expertly about it, but I can speak expertly about the design of the tank, putting it together, taking a look at it, and giving you our thoughts on it. Now, it is $135 for the complete kit, which gives you all the main weapon upgrades right there. As you can see, those individually are sold out. The whole kit and caboodle right here for $135 is sold out. So I'm not sure whether people bought these thinking that it would fit Sakaran's, because it definitely won't, and I'll show you here in a second, or if they just bought this and then I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why you buy these separate, because this is the only one so far, although we have seen that new Bombard tank that looks to be a very similar chassis, although the design on the side is separate. So chances are we're getting a new class of tanks rolling out for the Horus Heresy, and maybe, if we're lucky, for 40K as well. So here's the packaging that's going to come in. Just your standard Forge World squad size box and some blister packs of the weapons right here, which are pretty nicely done, and you know, they're on the sprue and everything right there, so you're gonna have to open these up and cut them out and trim them down and either glue them in or magnetize them in. So I'll definitely give you my thoughts on which magnets to use. I don't quite have enough time today to magnetize these to show you all, but I definitely can figure out really quick which magnets to use right there. So once we open up this box, and by the way, Forge World, you know, if this is your first time seeing Forge World, the packaging and such, Forge World actually has come a long ways as far as their instruction manuals and their packaging, because they didn't used to have this cool packaging. They didn't used to have very good packaging at all. A lot of stuff would just come damaged and not have any bubble packs or anything like that. But these larger chunks of pieces, you can already tell, they're probably going to be quite sturdy, and once they're situated in here, there's not a whole lot of movement and things. And there was padding in the envelope itself. Now, before we jump into looking at the parts, we're going to take a look at the instructions, but let me address this right here too. So we're talking a lot of prep time on this stuff right here. Remember, we just saw that these are sold out at Forge World. It's December. Okay, these were produced in July. They were floated over from England to here in the States to the Memphis distribution facility, where we can now get all of our Forge World stuff here in America from in our local currency, although it is a bit more expensive than if we, you know, traded the currency rate. We've done a ton of articles on that. There's no sense spilling the milk on that one right there, but you can look them up and find out more about that. You're going to end up paying a lot more than if you just exchanged your currency and bought them from England. But that being said, there's a lot of prep work that's going into this stuff, a lot of deadlines. You know, if they're producing these things 6 months out, to the point that we get them here in the States and they go on sale, think about the lead times on the paint jobs, think about the lead times on the prep. Like, a lot of folks get mad at GW, and I'm definitely not defending GW, because I'll call out their shenanigans when I see them all day, every day. But for the most part, on the production side of things, they have gotten better. On the prep time, they have gotten better. A lot of planning, a lot of stuff is going into this that you really don't see until you get these little clues and really kind of start to understand the whole behind the scenes workings of what's happening over there at Forge World. So there's also some 3D print marks on this particular resin here. So they're using their larger 3D printers to print them out, and then of course cast the masters in resin and make multiple copies of them, which, you know, in this day and age, I would imagine that's pretty standard, you know, because That's just the way to do it. We used to have these kits made literally by hand, and they would come with no instructions, nothing like this, nothing full color. And it would be kind of a bear to put like stuff like a Bane blade together, or you know, a Titan. Like 20 years ago, putting together the first Warhound Titan, there was like pictures like this, like it assembled. There was no like step by step, there was no exploded view. So now, you know, 20 years later, once we start having all of these things that they're, you know, they're rendering it, it's really cool to see from a perspective of old, you know, veteran hobbyists to the now, and seeing this, it makes it a lot easier for folks. Getting into the parts themselves, there really isn't a whole lot of parts, and there's only like 12 steps, no, 9 steps, excuse me. And I mean, it's super easy. It looks like it goes together, and I really want to point this out right here. If you have a Sakaran tank, or anything with treads from Forge World for that matter, you've probably seen in the past where they bust off the, they attach the back tread area with a sprue, because this is where they fill it from, right? So what they did here, it looks like, I haven't examined the part, but I'm just imagining, is this is where they fill this part with resin, and then they made these little tread bits right here, instead of making the whole tread separate, which is a pain to line up. They just made these little parts here separate to line up, because this area is going to be damaged once you trim it up, but now it's not going to be damaged because you're going to put these little tread caps, we'll call them, over top of that damaged area where it's probably going to be filled. Everything else appears to slot in. You could use the weapon mount and the main weapon brace right here, and the hats, you could keep those off and do them different colors or something, or hazard stripes, depending on, you know, what chapter and what things you're trying to do. But it looks like there is some opportunities here for magnetization, because we don't know if there's going to be another strike tank that comes out. Maybe there's additional weapons that go on the side here. It doesn't look like it's set up for sponsons. We've seen sponsons on the Bombard tank, but it's really hard to see, you know, to know what the future holds. So it's better off to future-proof your miniatures at this point, and then, you know, you're good to go. And you can pick up little weapon packs and things, you know, down the road, instead of being like, oh crap, I gotta buy a whole new tank. So just try to use magnets wherever you can, and for the most part, Forge World's made it a little easier. There's no magnet holes or anything on this, unfortunately, but we're gonna get to that here. So here's your 3 main weapons, and of course the little different power supplies or ammo storage hoppers on the top. So here's the main chassis parts all laid out. As you can see, now the size kind of starts to become a little bit clearer. Like, wait a minute, this is a little bit smaller than I thought it might be. And it is, and that's the first thing when I saw this, I was like, oh my, that's about the size of a rhino. And exactly what I was talking about here on the backs, those tread cap parts, so to speak. That is exactly what's happening here. So they're filling it, and then you clip this off, and then you'll put those little tread cap bits right there, and this stem right here too. Got to be careful about these. Sometimes you have to fill those little air holes with a little bit of plastic putty. Now, I showed you this plastic putty before, but you can, we'll always add it to the description right down there, but it's Vallejo plastic putty. It comes in a tube. It's great for filling. It gets super hard, super quick. About, you know, in like an hour or two, give or take, and then you can just kind of scrape it off. It doesn't, there's no recess or anything like that. It doesn't shrink. It just, where you put it is pretty much where you put it till you trim it off, and you know, kind of fill up those holes or gaps or anything that you might have there. I pretty much used a whole tube of that stuff on a Mastodon tank once. Remember to get these little shims right here too, as you're going through and clipping all the parts off. They're kind of hard to see, and they're a little deceptive sometimes. And then here's the front of the tank, what looks like your weapon mount here. Now it looks kind of, you probably see a little bit of sheen in the video right here, and that is because this is mold release on here. So you always want to make sure that you take a little dish soap and scrub it down with an old toothbrush or a plastic bristle brush, so you don't damage the surface or anything like that. You can use sonic cleaners, and we have a link to those, of course, as well below, that you can scoop up off of Amazon. I have one that's about, or I found one, I bought one, I still have it, that's about, that'll fit a Baneblade chassis. It's pretty big, so you can, you know, dunk a whole kit or a larger kit or multiple small kits at one time, set the timer for 5 minutes, walk away, come back, drain it out, make sure you don't lose any parts down the drain, and you're good to go. But you can definitely tell this has got that Sakaran styling, but it isn't quite as big as a Sakaran for sure. And the bottom, if you're familiar with the Sakaran, definitely looks very Sakarian-ish. But again, that's really small compared to a Sakaran. And don't worry, we got one. We'll compare it. Back stacks too, but there's I think there's 4 stacks when it comes to Sakaran. There's only 2 on this one here. And I thought at first that these might be Sakaran smokestacks, but they're not. But they're still pretty well detailed, and they got the little rivets and everything like that. And then here's the back caps to the treads that I think is a pretty ingenious little twist that and a nice attention to detail that Forge World did right there, because you always jam up your track. You always mess up your tracks, no matter what kit it is. If that is the case, then that's really cool to see. Mount, weapon, front right there, and your little hatch. And then you've got these guys that will probably go into this negative space right here in some way possible. Now, I didn't really open these yet, but I'll probably show you all the variants here as soon as we get this guy assembled. So there's going to be a top piece right here that is going to slot into this area right here. I imagine the tolerance is good and we won't have to do any magnets on that, so I'm just not gonna even worry about that one right now. So let's get it trimmed down, put it together, and compare it to some of the other tanks out there that you're probably a little bit more familiar with. Isn't this just the cutest thing you ever did see? Oh man, I love this. I love this little tank, this little Sabre tank. I can't wait to get the bombard when it comes out too, because it's just so cool. Like maybe it's me, maybe I'm completely off tilt here, because back in the day I used to make little Rhino conversions where I cut them down and kind of stick them together, and it's for VDR vehicle design rules, and it's really cool to kind of see, you know, this actually happening, and it's actually a kit. So maybe I'm more into it than most people, but it just brings back really fond memories of, you know, just cutting out whole tanks in half just to do some crazy stuff. Anyways, so the tank itself is probably about 3 by 5 inches if I had to guess. It's basically an index card. It's very similar to a Rhino, so 3 by 5 give or take, and it's about 2 inches tall at its top point of the weapon right here. And you can see that you can switch out this right here to be the main weapon. Now I just use a little poster tack, because like I said, I don't have time to dig out all my tools and go to town today, so I'd use a 1/4 inch magnet right there on both surfaces. Plenty of space, definitely, for sure, that you could put a 1/4 inch magnet right there. You may want to leave off this bit so you can paint it differently, like a contrasting color or something. I didn't glue this down either. I used some poster tack there, so you could do that a different color. The weapons, I would imagine that you would want to glue down the weapon mount itself, and then you could use a 1/8 inch magnet to get into the weapon mount and attach whichever weapon to the mount itself. And remember, there's all sorts of different, there's a multi-melter. You get all 4 of the top, or this is a flamethrower. I had the multi-melter right here. There's all sorts of different top weapons, and there's the heavy bolter, which I think is probably the most striking, so we're going to switch it out for that one right there. So probably your lowest point cost and most ubiquitous kind of choice right there. And then on the sides here, you've also got the Hunter Killer missiles, which slot into these little gaps right there. Now you could use a 1/8 inch magnet as well to attach these, because who knows what other, you know, little add-ons they might have in the near future. Now on the top, like I said, well, you got to take that off. This is just slots in by tolerance. You don't even have to worry about that. It's not going to need to be magnetized or anything like that. Oh, that actually just stays on there as well with the tolerance itself. So pretty cool stuff that they're doing with the computers, that everything just basically slots in, and very little things actually have to be magnetized unless you really want to feature-proof your miniatures here. Now, a couple other things I wanted to talk about on this one. Like the tread detail is really cool. It's very neat to see that it all is very crisp and very well done. On the bottom there, you can see it's also very well done, except for the hatch falls off the back, and everything lines up really good back here with the smokestacks and such. And like I said, that interfacing with these rear tread caps is a really good idea on Forge World's part, so super kudos to that. Now let's see how these compare to some of the other stuff out there that you might be more familiar with. So as suspected, it is about the same size as a Rhino. It's probably a little shorter, but definitely about as long-ish right there. Now its profile is going to be about a little smaller. It's not quite as tall, but it is pretty cute. I mean, you could, in theory, use these for Rhinos if you really wanted to. If you really wanted to scoop up a bunch of these and have something kind of different, I guess. I'm not sure. I mean, you could do it as counts as. I wouldn't even be mad about that. Now, when you compare it to a Primaris Marine, they're kind of gigantic, and that's, I guess, by design. I don't know if I have. We'll just go with our ubiquitous Death Corpsman right here, which probably on this base is about the size of a normal Space Marine. So that kind of makes sense right there. And then, of course, when you compare it to a Sicaran, you see where the similarities are 100%. But the sizing, you could literally fit this inside of a Sicaran tank, which is kind of makes me giggle a little bit. But overall, I think this is probably more well designed than a Sicaran, and definitely the treads are very similar. But like I'm going to show you back here, the big problem with the Sicaran treads was not only did these things have terrible mold lines on them, but you would jack up the rear right here whenever you try to clean off the sprues. And I actually didn't fill this because I plan on going back with some brown and scuffing up the treads and doing that normal tread work that we normally do. But I mean, this is pretty striking, to be quite honest. I mean, it's very, very similar to everything on here, even the front, and we've already seen that there's a different design for the bombard. The bombard's actually more like this with a weapon sponson, but then more sloped. It's almost like this, but backwards. Like this area right here is where they put the weapon, and the front is more of this, just like squared off. So it's kind of cool how they just take the different elements and they're like, okay, well, let's just spin around backwards, put a weapon back here, shrink it down, and sponsons. You know, like, I don't know what goes into all the prep work, obviously a lot of time, as we showed you, but I think it's really neat to kind of see. So here is that, and let's see if we can get all three in here. I will turn off this camera and zoom out just a little bit right there to kind of give you the overall picture of the size of these tanks right here. So very, very cool tank overall. It is 135. Forge World is expensive. 100% agree with you. But I still wanted to show you this new little tank right here that just came out from Forge World, and kind of you know, it just, there's something about it. It struck me, so I liked it, and I wanted to definitely talk about it with you all there. So I can't wait to get the bombard version of it and kind of see how that stacks up between the two, to be quite honest. So maybe that'll be out soon, maybe not, but either way, I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled for it there, and any additional variants now that we showed you how to future-proof this. Oh, and if you are going to do magnets here, I wrote it up for you in the break real quick. So you're going to need 8 magnets for the 100 killers, 4 for the chassis, 4 for the weapon, 8 for the top weapons. Excuse me, that actually is not true, because you only need 1, and then 4, so you're only going to need 5. So scratch that, put a 5 there. In the main weapon, you will need 6, because 3 are going to go in the hull, 3 are going to go on the blaster right here. Oh, and I didn't show you that either. I am the worst. So here is one variant. Let's lock that in right there. That was really cool. I would kind of canter it up like that, so it looks pretty neat, like it's firing. And then the autocannon version, which I would probably have more down on plane and level, it looks really, really neat too. So those are all of the variants out there. These weapon packs cost $19, and they have the different tops, but we're not going to get into all that right now, but we do have them. And you could paint that different with the hatch, and maybe potentially with, you know, this front weapon armor plate right there. So that is it for this one. Thank you for watching our unbox and build of the new Sabre strike tank for the Legios Astartes in Forge World, and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can be the very first to like and comment on all our future videos.